Good morning and happy Wednesday, everybody. This FNGM here, and today I'm here to talk to you about Encounter Party. But before we get started, let me just say that I'm really happy to have you all here today. Let me also just say that this review will, as per usual, be filled with spoilers. So if you do not feel like having episode 3, which aired last night, spoiled for you right now, I would suggest watching one of my other videos, like this one. It's pretty good. But this isn't about me. This is about Encounter Party. Alright, now that you've been warned about the spoilers, and now that I've shilled myself mercilessly, let's go ahead and get started. Tommy, hit the theme music! Tommy? Tommy? Tommy! My lawyers have informed me that I should tell you that Tommy is doing just fine. So let's talk about episode 3 of Encounter Party, The Very Private Passenger. Okay, so episode 3 begins by trying to help us answer the question, who is Trim Thistledrop? Now, first mate Marcus Tim, takes Olivina aside to have a very intense conversation. Well, Trim Thistledrop was a halfling, just like Olivina, so there's a little bit of a connection there, I suppose, from his perspective. And we also learn that Trim Thistledrop went missing just before they hit Waterdeep. So there's, I guess, some concern that maybe Olivina is Trim Thistledrop in disguise, maybe trying to catch a free ride on the way to Baldur's Gate. But either way, it's a very intense conversation, and in true first mate Marcus Tim fashion, we're not getting a lot of information from this guy. The guy is guarded tight, is more guarded than Fort Knox, right? Quick aside, Brian the Dungeon Master is playing Olred, the owlbear companion to Olivina, like a big old dog. I imagine right now kind of a reddish white, like big old fluffy husky, and it is just what a lovely image. So after this intense conversation between the first mate and Olivina, Tolo decides he's going to investigate further and seeks to start a conversation or a dialogue with Torbuck, the one-eyed dwarven sailor, because that's a pretty common stereotype, the one-eyed dwarven sailor. No, I love the character. Well, Torbuck makes a big excuse to the first mate to go polish the cannons, which is not a euphemism like I thought it was. Anyway, it makes an excuse to first mate Marcus Tim to then pull Tolo aside to have a quick conversation. Tolo learns throughout the course of this conversation that the missing halfling had a bit of weirdness kind of surrounding her. She had this bird that she brought on, but the crew noticed that this very large bird the crew noticed that they never saw Trim and the bird in the same area at once, which of course causes us, the audience, and some of the cast members to think, hey, maybe there might be some druidic shenanigans or maybe some sort of polymorph issue going on. We also learned that Trim kind of kept to themselves, and there really wasn't a lot known before the passenger went missing. Oh, also we learned that Trim is a female halfling, so this explains a little bit more as to why there's a concern with Olivina. We also learned that there is a very private passenger. There's a permanent passenger who lives on the Cherrywind, but the crew is not at liberty to really say anything about this passenger, thus the very private one. Of course, Tolo gets very curious about this, as does the rest of the group very soon. Quick aside, Tolo uses his classic catchphrase again, pardon my Elvish, which is just one of my favorite lines that I've ever heard ever at any point. Hey, showrunners, if you ever decide to put that line on a t-shirt, my size is medium and I wouldn't mind having one. I'll even wear it on this show. A wink. So Tolo, Asher, and Olivina decide that they're going to investigate this very private passenger, but they have to figure out a way to get to that passenger without the rest of the crew noticing, especially first mate Marcus Tim. So they begin their planning, and eventually it is decided that they're going to use Olred, the owlbear, to basically distract the first mate and the rest of the crew by having the owlbear run around like a dog with the zoomies all over the top deck. Wonderful idea. Of course, in true wizard fashion, Asher mentions once the plan has been made that, oh yeah, she can also cast invisibility. This happens every time I ever notice a plan of like subterfuge or stealth between characters that involve a wizard, is that the wizard always waits till the last moment to go, oh, I also have invisibility. Well, that changes the whole plan. I thought it was funny. Okay, so they decided they're going to do this plan. Meanwhile, Marcus Tim visits Vin and Flick, and I believe Dridian is there. I'm having trouble remembering if Dridian was there or not, to discuss the possibility of them investigating the missing passenger, Trim Thistledrop, who had a room on the ship that's been pretty much apparently left alone since. So Marcus Tim wants them to get into this room and see what clues they can find as to the whereabouts of Trim. So during this conversation, Flick tries to explain that they have the unique ability to pick locks, but is trying to explain it in such a way that it sounds like a very legal up and up way to do it, which is always fun to watch the rogue say, "Hey, I can do crime, but it's not crime, not exactly." It's So once both groups have their marching orders, the plan to distract is put into action. Ulred, full-on zoomy mode, runs up to the top deck and starts causing all kinds of chaos. The rest of the groups scatter to do what they need to do. So we first start with Asher, Olivine, and Tolo, who head to the very private passenger's room. Upon knocking on the door, they are met by the very suspicious and very eccentric Ignis Epsilon. Ignis Epsilon is clearly your classic eccentric inventor stereotype, and I am 100% here for it. She has this crazy frizzy red hair that probably hasn't been combed in, 20 years or so. Huge bespectacled glasses that make her eyes look like bug-eyed anime. I'm getting a very Professor Trelawney vibe from this. She is simultaneously super suspicious and will not open the door any further, but also very curious about who these people are that are approaching her, and she's very factual. Tolo, Asher, and Olivina try to convince her that she should speak with them so they can get some more clues about this murder. And Ignis is initially not really having it, but the group manages to convince them with their charm by doing a group persuasion check, and she invites them to dinner in her cabin later that night. While they're dealing with Ignis Epsilon, the other three, Flick, Vin, and Dridian, head over to Trim Thistledrop's room. They pop open the locks, head on in, and discover that there's a very nice room where nobody is apparently staying anymore. So they start to investigate. Flick heads over to the desk where he sees a number of papers. Vin heads over to the window where he can see out and maybe see what clues he can find around there, maybe an escape point. And Dridian heads over to the birdcage to see what that's all about. Now, Flick starts to read the papers, and immediately we hear the voice again. Apparently, we're going to hear this voice anytime Flick tries to read anything, which is delightful, and I still firmly am holding on to my warlock theory that I mentioned in episode 1. Flick goes blind and isn't able to read these papers. Anyway, Vin is headed at the window, discovers that the window can be opened, and also discovers fresh bird droppings, implying that a bird of some sort, maybe the one from the cage, has been here fairly recently. Now, Dridian is looking over the cage and discovers really quickly that the cage is completely clean and doesn't appear to have ever been used, which again adds to that theory that maybe Trim and the bird are one and the same. During this investigation, a couple of things that are interesting happens. First, Flick, when Flick hears the voice, this is done at the table. There's no, let's go to the kitchen and have this conversation. So everyone is now aware that Flick hears this voice. At least the players are aware, but the characters may not be. Flick then tries to play it off like it's no big, like they're not blind at all. And when asked about, hey, what are in those notes, Flick just turns and goes, well, what do you think of this? Which is brilliant. Great job, Ned. The second thing of interest that happens is that Brian starts handing out handouts. The first handout is some paperwork that they can look over, which I am delighted to notice that when we saw the paperwork on camera, the symbol of the Zentarum was very clearly on there. Yes, more world building. Brian also hands out the bird cage, and at the very bottom of the bird cage, it is discovered that there is some sort of runic symbols, which may be a cipher for those notes. I think it's wonderful. We then move back over to Asher, Olivina, and Tolo, and Asher decides to use her invisibility spell to head down to the bottom of the ship. So when she gets down there, she makes her stealth checks and rolls really, really, really poorly, but for some reason isn't caught. Now there are two figures down below. We note that there is a cook, and we note that Grabosh is being held in chains down in the bottom level. Now the cook is in the kitchen doing his thing and doesn't seem to notice Asher, although again that's very suspect because that was a very bad roll. Anyway, so while looking around very briefly, Asher notices the very large trunk. That I believe it's the same trunk that we saw Flick messing with in episode 1, and we still don't know what's inside of that trunk. But she primarily focuses her attention on Grabosh. So Asher tries to start a dialogue with Grabosh. Is immediately believed to be some sort of apparition, and then she remembers that she's invisible. So she drops the invisibility spell and tries to speak with Grabosh, learning that Grabosh is very, very defeated at this point. Isn't really fighting what's happening, probably because he's in the throes of depression over the death of his brother. He does mention that he's thirsty, so Asher decides she's gonna walk over to the cook and ask for a glass of water. Well, through that conversation with the cook, we discover why the cook didn't notice her entering the room in the first place, because the cook is deaf, or at least I believe he's deaf, because he stares at Asher's mouth as they speak. So, which is okay. Now I get it. Asher manages to secure a glass of water for Grabosh, but doesn't really get a lot of information beyond just that Grabosh just really isn't feeling life anymore. So we then head back to the other group. So we're back there. Andrew Krug has solved the cipher, which is phenomenal. And also Dridian, just as a character, recognizes the symbol of Zentarum, so starts to realize kind of what's up. We learn a couple of things from the cipher. First, we learn that there are two operatives working on this ship, which I firmly believe that one of them is going to be that tiefling cell sword that we saw before. We also learn that Trim Thistledrop is apparently a member of the Zentarum. One of their goals on this ship is that we think they're trying to steal the ship, because there's a lot of information about the ship. We learn that the ship is magical. We learn that various sections of the ship are basically different magic items comprising one whole. We learn that they weren't able to really figure much out about the masthead, but that may be the control center. And we learn that the magic items, that each different section of the ship that's a different kind of magic has to be attuned. So we can draw from that if Hari died and we're dealing with a skeleton crew, then that must have broken the attunement, which means that the ship can't move because the crew doesn't have enough people to finish the attunement necessary to keep the ship moving, which is why the Cherry Wind is stalled out. The other thing we learn of interest is that the Zentarum operatives have been informed that they are not to be monitoring the young woman on the ship, Shen. We aren't told why, but Shen is not to be watched. Now we have another mystery, like what's up with Shen and why can't she be watched? We end the episode basically with the group back together, coming to and kind of sharing their information and coming to the realization that they haven't ever met the captain. They've never seen the captain, and there's a very real possibility that it may not just be Hari, the top man, who's dead, but also the captain, because why else hasn't the ship been moving? Why hasn't the captain sought someone else to get the attunement and continue on? So the group makes a commitment that they're going to find out more about the captain a next episode. That's the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Now, I want to talk about the things that I liked about it. I want to talk about the things that made me kind of stop and go, And then I want to talk about the things that have me really excited for episode 4. So what did I love about this episode? Well, first of all, Tolo being Tolo. Pardon my Elvish. I know I said it before and I'll say it again. It's my favorite catchphrase! I think Kari Payne is doing a wonderful job. And watching him jump into that already established Olavina and Asher dynamic, which I freaking love also, was just delightful to see. Then we move over and we have Dridian and Vin doing the elf and the long strider, but this time with plucky companion Flick, and that was delightful to watch. Again, we're starting to see these connections being made, and we're starting to see these relationships becoming more established, and the dynamics fleshed out, and I'm really enjoying that. I want to talk about Andrew Krug for a minute. Andrew has every single episode impressed the ever-living hell out of me with the way that he portrays his character. I love how he approaches the game of Dungeons & Dragons. I love how much lore he knows. I love how very in character he is, and he has this very kind of intense character. I really enjoy it because he's playing this intense character around some characters who can act kind of silly at times, and yet it doesn't feel out of place. He just fits right in, and that is awesome. I would be proud to have any one of these players at my table. I would be ecstatic to run for them, but I would be intimidated to have Andrew at my table because watching him play makes me want to be a better dungeon master. Speaking of dungeon masters, I think Brian is doing a bang-up job with this mystery. There's always a possibility when you run into a mystery that, it becomes clear as day who did what, and I don't know what's going on in this one, but not in a frustrating, like, I can't piece it together and this is dumb. It's like, no, there are definitely pieces, and we're definitely starting to see a picture here, but I can't see it yet, and every question that they ask or get answered just leads to even more questions, and that's the mark of a good mystery, and I think he's doing a good job. Okay, what did I think was a moment? Now, this one's not really a moment, it's just something I noticed that made me go, oh, okay. I noticed that when they were picking some locks, that Flick was asked to do a sleight of hand check and not a thieves tool check. I think I've noticed that before, and it hit me that I don't think they're using tool proficiencies in this game. And isn't tool proficiency a big part of the Dungeons and Dragons game that can't be left out? I'm going to be real with you for a second. I'm going to be really real with you for a second. I don't like tool proficiencies. I don't think they're useful. I think they are redundant. I think that making it a sleight of hand check was a great idea. We don't need to have two separate proficiencies, sleight of hand and thieves tools. I don't think we need for performance one for musical instruments. There's a lot of redundancies in tools. I think tools would have been great if we had a really fleshed out crafting rule set. I think that then tools would have had an amazing chance to shine. But otherwise, I could take them or leave them. They're mainly just flavor. Anyway, so that's not really a bad moment. It's just kind of I noticed that, and I secretly agree. There was an editing snafu that really caught my attention. And, again, things get edited, and it's hard to put them together when you have like 3 to 5 hours of material to go through. But there's one point in which the two groups were separate, and they were doing their thing, and then suddenly they're right together, but with no explanation. Now, this is going to happen, right? This is going to happen editing snafus like this. It was just a little jarring, and it's kind of one of those things that when I notice it, I just can't, stop thinking about, how they get back together. What do we miss? What was the tie back in? Which is a weird thing for me to get hung up on, and that is a me issue, not a editing issue per se. Alright, so what am I interested in seeing next episode or over the next few episodes? Well, first of all, what's the deal with the druid or the bird or the whatever? Who is Trim Thistledrop? Where is she? Why did she go missing? Where's the bird? Where's the bird? Speaking of birds, Flick. Flick reads another page and then goes blind, and this time it doesn't recover immediately. Okay, well, what's going on there? I don't know. Maybe he traded his ability to read away so he could get the ability to speak. I don't know. Again, I'm on my warlock theory. All right. What's going on with the Zents, right? I'm excited to see that the Zentarum got put in. I noticed the little symbol on the piece of paper, and I'm like, The biggest question, obviously, still is who killed Hari. We're still wondering on that, but that's okay. That's all right. We're learning a lot here, so I'm almost not noticing that I don't know the answer to that yet because I have so many other questions. And the most important question that we have right now about the Cherry Wind is, where is the captain? Crew is really hush-hush about a lot of things on this ship. I'm starting to wonder if all of this centers around the captain or potential lack thereof. Maybe the captain's dead. Maybe First Marcus Tim killed the captain. I don't know. I'm interested to seeing where this all ends up. All right, well, I want to thank you again for being here to hear my review and my thoughts and my feelings about this episode. I really liked it. I really think things are starting to pick up. Episode 3 is probably one of my favorite episodes thus far. Things are really starting to come together, and things are starting to move pretty smoothly. Classic D&D shenanigans happening, and it's very entertaining. You can watch Encounter Party on Freevee and Plex. You can watch it on the Dungeons & Dragons Adventure Network, which you can get on Freevee or Plex. Encounter Party will airs every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard time. I really hope that you are going to catch the next episode, because then I hope you join me in talking about it the next Wednesday when I'll be back to discuss that particular episode. Hey, if you also happen to like these reviews, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button or hit that like button. Both of those will really help me get my stuff out there, but that's okay if not. It'd also be cool if you shared your thoughts and your theories with me. So hit those comments and let me know what you're thinking of the show. I'm really liking it, but I want to know what you're thinking of it too. All right, either way, I'll be seeing y'all next week. Have a good one.